What's up, you guys? It's Ruth and welcome back to my channel. In today's video we're going to go into part 2 of the story of Ruth in chapter 3 of The Women of the Bible Speak by Shannon Bream. So let's get right into this video. This video is going to contain topics of me speaking about the Bible and talking about the Bible. If you do not wish to hear me speak or talk about the Bible, you have been warned to click off the video now. So let's get right into this. Against all odds, Ruth found security and happiness. Boaz responded to the nobility of her nature. He was clearly deeply impressed by her. He married her, but not before another interesting twist, one that returns us once again to the theme of choice. Another unnamed male relative of Naomi's had first right of refusal of Naomi's property and her daughter-in-law. It would be a choice with lifelong consequences. Boaz alerted the man to a piece of land belonging to the late Elimelech, a parcel Naomi hoped to sell. Though the man was interested in the land, when Boaz revealed that its sale would be contingent upon his taking Ruth in marriage, he declined. "Then I cannot redeem it because I might endanger my own estate," he says in Ruth 4:6. Who knows what eventually came out of this man? We don't even know his name because he glides out of the story of salvation unknown forever. He passed on marrying Ruth, the ancestor of King David, Ruth, the ancestor of Christ himself. He chose another path, and Boaz chose Ruth. Brave and monumentous choices are everywhere in the story. Naomi's husband Elimelech left his homeland and made a new life for himself in Moab. Naomi chose to return home after his death. Ruth made the most daring choice of all, leaving her home and family to follow Naomi into the unknown. And Boaz could have rejected Ruth just like the nameless kinsman did, but he didn't. He married her, and together they built a new family. Naomi, Ruth, and Boaz built a family of choice, a family that branched into the tree of the life that bears our Savior. Early Christians, when they read the story of Ruth, couldn't help but see themselves in it. For them, it was more than just a nice story about a young woman who got her happy ending. Ruth's acceptance into the family of Israel spoke to them about their own inclusion of God's family. They found in this story an echo of Paul's words about the Gentile church, the wild olive tree grafted in among them, and with them a partaker of the root and fat of the olive tree, Romans 11:17. Ruth chose to leave her people and her gods, just as the Gentile people chose to leave theirs. Like Ruth, they too came to the house of bread, Bethlehem, hungry for any scraps they could find, and like her, they found themselves like unexpected recipients of the fullness of the promise. Ruth, like Abraham, became a powerful symbol of the riches that await those who chose to step out of faith and leave behind the comfortable in favor of the strange and spiritually challenging. Christian writers also found an echo of Jesus in the way Ruth was treated. She arrived in Bethlehem expecting to be regarded at least out of least, but Boaz never saw her that way. He called her blessed and told her not to fear. When she lay prostrate at his feet, he lifted her up like the father of the prodigal son and celebrated her. Boaz brought her unexpected blessings and favored her. Is it any wonder that Christians see in him a reflection of love of Christ for his Gentile church? Ruth's story strikes a powerful emotional chord in Gentile readers who see themselves in it. For ancient readers, life was not full of kindness of choices we have. Part of the power of Ruth's story lies in the idea that it is a woman making these choices for everyone were much more constrained in Ruth's time, but women's choices were practically non-existent. Today we take for granted that women in much of the world can choose what they want to do with their lives, what they will study and where they will go to school, even whom they will marry. These are elementary choices that define basic freedom in our culture, but none of these freedoms were readily available to the women we are reading about, and they certainly weren't available to Ruth. So for Ruth to make such a radical choice, leaving her home country without any male protection and following Naomi to Judea, would have been almost unbelievable to early readers. Her decision to do so would have underscored the power of her determination and the importance of choice in their own lives. So why did Ruth do it? That is the question lurking at the heart of this story. The Bible does not give us a definitive answer. Some interpreters theorize that Ruth was making a religious statement. Perhaps the years she spent as Mahlon's wife and in a Jewish family had convinced her that God of Israel was the only true God. and the one she wanted to follow too. Others believed Ruth's choice was an ethical and moral one, and if she had chosen not to journey with Naomi back to Bethlehem, Naomi, an elderly woman, would have had to travel alone. Ruth's act of kindness may have preserved Naomi's life. Boaz certainly seems to see her actions in this light. But might there be a lesson in the unknowns? Think about how often we get caught up in worrying about motivations, our own or someone else's. What did she really mean by that? What was his angle? 1 Samuel 16:7 tells us that God sees not as man sees, for man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. God alone knows all that motivated Ruth, but in the perfect grace and mercy, her story led to redemption, hope, and the legacy of Jesus himself. When Boaz married Ruth, the elders of Bethlehem uttered a blessing upon the two of them. May the Lord make the woman who is coming to your house like Rachel and Leah, who together built the house of Israel and wrought mightily in Ephrathah. She will have a name in Bethlehem, and out of the seed which the Lord will give you from this young woman, may your house be like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah. Ruth 4:11-12. What a remarkable statement. Here at the end of the story of Ruth, the Bible specifically points us back to the story of Tamar, inviting us to see the two women in relation to each other, because of course Tamar was the sixth great-grandmother of Boaz himself and the founding mother through Judah of his house. The elders of the city were asking that Boaz's family share in the fruitfulness and stability of the house of Perez, and it's tempting to see something more in it as well. The story of Tamar and Judah was also one of the choices Tamar gave Judah the opportunity, and he did the right thing. Boaz was also given an opportunity by Ruth, and he too followed her lead. The bold moves of Tamar and Ruth caused a kind of chain reaction around them, inspiring choices that ultimately shaped history. Naomi's nameless relative is consigned to scriptural oblivion because he doesn't step up when opportunity comes calling. Maybe he was unprepared or simply not part of God's bigger plan. Each of us, though, must listen and be willing when his unexpected call comes out into our lives. Both Tamar and Ruth were outsiders, women grafted into the house of Israel. They stood outside the community and covenant, and yet their actions guaranteed the continuance of the covenant. As Matthew says in his gospel, when he names both Tamar and Ruth in the genealogy of Christ, the two women were key to the lineage that brought Jesus to earth. God didn't work miracles through them despite who they were, but preciously because of it. Jesus issued a warning to the comfortable of his own day when he told the Pharisees that out of these stones God can raise up children for Abraham. Matthew 3:9. The family of God is not built on blood but choice, God's adoption of us, which we have done nothing to deserve, but also our decision to choose God. Finally, the presence of Tamar and Ruth in the genealogy of Jesus points us to the value and worth of the work of women, especially in a world that did not always see that value. Ruth bore Boaz a son, and the woman of Bethlehem rejoiced with Naomi. The woman said to Naomi, "Praise be to the Lord, who this day has not left you with a guardian redeemer. May he become famous throughout Israel. He will renew your life and sustain you in your old age, for your daughter-in-law who loves you and who is better than you than 7 sons has given him birth." Ruth 4:14-15. What a shocking statement. This must have been to ancient readers a woman better than sons, a woman who wasn't even related by blood better than 7 sons. But a Christian reader finds in those words not just the glad rejoicing of Naomi, who had at last found peace, happiness, and love, but also the faint, far-off glimmer of the kingdom of Christ. And the kingdom we see dawning here, the last will be first and the first will be last. They despised and rejected will be the guests greatest honor, and many will come from east and west and will sit down with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Ruth and Tamar in the kingdom of heaven. That is the end of this chapter. I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.